I think people are getting to the place they're sick of medications, they're sick of the pharmacology, they're sick of feeling like crap, run down, no energy, and they're in their 40s. There is only a couple great solutions, and the most important is that you want to think right.
Right.
So if you want to think right.
Welcome to the Maverick Entrepreneur Podcast, where business success meets personal purpose. Here we empower entrepreneurs to strike that perfect balance between massive growth and unwavering values. Dive deep into strategies, inspirations, and stories that ensure you set your foundation in faith and don't compromise your family on your ascent to the top.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Maverick Entrepreneur. Another episode, another epic time. Hopefully, you are ready to engage. And we've been doing a series specifically on how to get you, mind, body, and spirit, in the best place possible for this next year. There's so much noise out there when it comes to health or fitness or nutrition. And listen, I'm not trying to be the guru for all those things. But I do have a lot of knowledge and a lot of really smart friends. With me today is a good friend and my guest, Dr. Jeff McWhorter, who has some very interesting things that he is here to share with you to help you live your best life. So welcome to the show, Dr. Jeff. Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Dr. Matt. Glad to be here.
You know, we go by, in the chiropractic world, I mean, you're probably more in the astute world taking care of everybody, but he is also a chiropractor with a very specific niche. And I'm sure in his world, he goes by Dr. McWhorter, but I got too many kids I see in my practice, too many families that they make me too many funny Hubbard jokes like old Mother Hubbard. So we're going by first name here today, but I brought you on because we've both been in the hyperbaric chamber world for a while.
Yep.
And I've been very passionate about it. I first was turned on to it in, way back in 2007. So, I mean, I was thinking how many years? Dang, man, that is a lot of years ago. And I got turned on to hyperbaric back then, and then started putting all my golf, caddies and golfers and pro golfers and USGA guys in there. Then I started getting them for all my NFL guys that I took care of.
Right.
And then it turned into, I started helping autistic kids, and I was donating my chamber to autistic families to let them use it for free. And I would tell you this still today, I didn't know the full power of hyperbarics, which is just going to be the opening to all the stuff that you do, right. Because you're the expert really in it. I was just the guy that knew it worked, and I bought one, then I bought a second one, then I started renting one out, and then I would donate it. But when I really learned the power of hyperbaric oxygen therapy was after COVID.
Oh, yeah.
So I literally had people that got the shot that it ruined their life.
100%. Yep.
And I started getting phone calls, and I just go, I understood some of the science and mechanism. Like, well, let's put you in my hyperbaric, see if we could detox you. I literally had a woman that could not walk. She went viral all over Facebook. And I said, I got to get you one of this. And then the company we use actually donated one for me. And then they ended up keeping it longer. We worked out a special deal, but she got 100% recovered. Yep. Due to hyperbaric oxygen therapy. That changed how I looked at it. Our worlds collided due to a mutual friend. And then I found out you had a HBOT spa.
That's right.
And so I realized then when you started telling me what you do on top of that for the brain, for recovery, for neurofeedback, I would love for you to talk about all the stuff that you do, but I'd love to start with your HBOT spa, because I think it's a concept that can honestly be in every city.
I agree.
It's
been a project of mine for about the last 8-9 years, and much to similar findings. I've had my patient population walks in with traumatic brain injury and concussions and neurological deficits primarily, and oxygenation of the brain, the nervous system. I mean, if we think about it very simplistically, aerobic organisms need oxygen for every cell to thrive in. If we're not at 100% saturation, there is always room for improvement in how the environment allows our cells to function. And so when you factor that into an aspect of how do we recover damaged tissue, therefore oxygen becomes even more vital in that process. So setting the stage or the environment for damaged tissue or healthy tissue to optimally function in is the first step. And I've based the majority of my career and about 95% of my treatment plans by implementing hyperbaric oxygen therapy. So 6 years ago, I came up with the concept that, throughout my career, I've seen that it is applicable to just about all walks of life, from everything from anti-aging to wellness to a global anti-inflammatory response to the body, which then couples into helping chiropractic adjustments stick better and optimizing how we cognitively function throughout the day and fight the 3 o'clock fatigue, sleep better at night. But you realize that the two hindrances around hyperbaric is really a neglect of informing the public of its benefits.
Yeah.
And the cost of entry point is usually something that's at an astronomical rate where patients most of them can't participate with paying for the number of sessions that will equate to the results we see in research. So that is kind of what was the birthing concept of the HBOT spa. Is my goal was to bring it as almost like a longevity tanning salon, where a membership or an availability for patients to have access to this cutting edge treatment at a price point that makes it affordable for most walks of life, allows us to help not just the 3%, but the masses. And so that HBOT spa was based around 3 clinical concepts that I saw having the widest spread inquiries for and the biggest applicability to many patient and wellness populations. And that's where the concept came from. So hyperbaric oxygen therapy, we acronymized that to HBOT, and that was the name HBOT Spa. And there's 3 pillars in that. It's based around nutritional IV infusions and optimization. It's based around hyperoxygenating every cell in the body to vibrate to an optimal performance aspect, and whether it's wellness or recovery. And then during the pandemic, I realized, for the first time in history, we really see a shift in what is arguably the most prevalent diagnosis category is some forms of mental illness. And mental wellness has, a lot of us dealt with anxiety and depression and these kind of side effects of being told you can't leave your house. And there's this mythical deathly virus that's attacking us all. So mental health can be addressed very simplistically from a holistic non-pharmacology approach via neurofeedback. So those 3 modalities complement each other and their synergistic activity of one another, and it brings it to the public at a cost that is affordable for most walks of life and our health conscious population that maybe is deterring from leaning on pharmacology so much in our new day and age. So.
But you know what I realized? I had a patient that was going through cancer treatments, and they had literally given a death sentence. And I said, hey, most people don't die from the cancer, they die from the chemo, and they just can't sustain it. It just kills their body. And I said, I'll give you the key to my office. You can come in here after every chemo session, because I was looking at everything happen. I said, this has got to be true for all these things. And he came in after every session of chemo, never had side effects of the chemo, never felt nauseous. He was probably halfway through treatments, and he was in his own mind going, I wonder if it's really, so he took a day off after chemo. It wrecked him for 3 days. And he said, I am never missing my hyperbaric session again. Literally got right back on it, got through it. It flushed it out of the system. It was constantly flushing out that nauseated feeling. And so he could still eat, still keep going. And guess what? He's alive today. The treatment worked. He's still alive. And he goes, man, hyperbarics changed my life. And I got to watch it. I'm like, I have to get this out to the world. People don't know.
Yeah. So, when cancer hits home for me, I actually am a lymphoma patient myself. I've self-administered hyperbaric since my diagnosis day. I've not progressed through stages in 3 years, and I've abstained from electing to do radiation and chemo, topical chemotherapy. And my oncologist and I have our conversations about that, but it's maintained my status. And if we think about cancer from a categorical standpoint, most cancer cells, unless it's attacking the respiratory system, are anaerobic by nature. So when we put a cancer patient in a hyperbaric oxygen chamber at the proper atmosphere, which is something that's highly important to realize, but we are, I'm not going to say that we're going to reverse cancer, but I will say that putting a patient in a hyperoxygenated environment is making it a very unfavorable environment for cancer cells to thrive in. And much to your point, chemo or radiation doesn't discern the cells that it's attacking in that area. So hyperbaric becomes a method of preserving our healthy cells during a treatment that may be effective, but also rather destructive to that tissue area of the body. So cancer is a great modality or a great diagnosis for hyperbaric to be a holistic approach that's non-invasive for managing, and that's just the tip of the iceberg of different cases.
Yeah, I've read different studies like on recovery. Let's just talk about it from a recovery standpoint.
Sure.
I've been told, 1 hour in a hyperbaric's like 8 hours worth of sleep.
Yep.
Is that true? What have you found?
Yeah, so I think that the main two components about hyperbaric's validity is either the atmospheric pressure we're at. We have a lot of debate on hard versus soft shells and the viability of those two comparing. And then the argument that research indicates that it's arguably more beneficial to be at a lesser pressure that's more tolerable for a longer duration of time than necessarily at a higher pressure for a shorter period of time. And that's where case by case, there's some variance in what is the recommended frequency, the dosage, the atmospheric pressure.
Yeah.
But overall, it's going to reduce a lot of different components of the oxidative stress in the body. And from a recovery standpoint, the aspect of improving how well our natural occurring cellular function can take place is really the main benefit that we're aiming for when we're doing hyperbaric. And so you got to realize it's not a miracle modality. It does take frequency and consistency to equate to the efficacy. And so I always talk with patients about what to expect based on our research findings. And most of those cases are published somewhere after anywhere from 20 to 40 sessions. So it's really important to understand to utilize this modality and its highest efficacy. It's a commitment. And that also is why the HBOT SPA structured its pricing to a point where membership and package rates actually make it affordable for patients to comply with that level of number of sessions to equate to the benefits that we're seeing published in research.
What do you do? Tell us about gyrostim. I know you're doing a lot with some pro athletes and some F1, F3 drivers. What is a gyrostim? What's it do and how's it beneficial?
So gyrostim is kind of my favorite thing that I do.
I could tell. You send me the videos, I could tell you're the most geeked on that.
Yeah. And so gyrostim is a multi-axial chair that allows us to stimulate how the brain communicates between the vestibular system, the cerebellum, and the visual cortex. And those three areas are what equates to our ability for equilibrium. And in an athletic standpoint, things like fine motor movement, coordination, balance, proprioception, and your aspect of overall gait function, which is how we run. And if you train a brain, the nice thing about gyrostim and the unique thing about my program is I train it at a different level than any other practitioner. There's only about 36 of them in the world, but
36 of these in the world. How many in the Western?
We're bringing the only one into Southern California region here this month.
Yeah.
But it has a tremendous impact on aspects of sports performance enhancement, concussion recovery, vestibular cerebellar deficits, whether that be from a stroke, a vestibular complication. It's based around the specificity of what that modality is allowing me to do.
You have people that fly in from around the world. Specifically, what was the name of the disease where people are coming in? Yeah,
so it's something that I have become pretty well known for is called Mal-Day debarkment syndrome. And this is a very rare, I think clinically speaking, it's miscategorized as a vestibular disorder. I think it's more of a disequilibrium disorder because it's typically involving one, two, or all three of those areas of neurology that causes the disequilibrium. But essentially a patient might take a cruise for 5 days or an extended period of travel on a train or an international flight. And when they get grounded again, they never feel like they're grounded again. They feel like they have sea legs or emotion internalized or visually in some cases, where they don't,
So they just don't
find
feel
equilibrium.
stable.
Right. They don't find equilibrium. And for the last 10 years, I've been correcting that within my intensive program, either a 1 or 2 week intensive with about an 85% success rate. And that has brought a lot of widespread awareness about that specific diagnosis to all reaches of the globe. So it's something it's only treated by a handful of doctors here in the United States. And but I think that gyrostim is the key component to my program.
Wow. That. Yeah. I've heard amazing things about that. So would you say, and then tell us a little bit about neurofeedback, because really a lot of people, this is, I watch a lot of high level entrepreneurs that are getting adrenal fatigue. They're exhausted. They start having migraines. Their body starts falling apart. It's between 40 and 55 years old. How can neurofeedback and hyperbaric help the entrepreneur? I mostly entrepreneurs out here. They're like, man, they're they want to relive, I'm sure, their college days playing football, but they're way past that.
Yeah. So when we think about how the brain communicates between different lobes and how processing speed takes place, how executive function, cognitive performance, and more so the efficiency of that communication takes place. Inefficiency and how our brain talks to ourselves is what equates to our 3 o'clock fatigue that a lot of us hit, especially if you're a high moving, powerful businessman, and the brain, much like muscle in the sense that if you don't use it, you lose it. So I get a lot of CEOs and executives that maybe are not spending as many hours in the office in their 60s, but still want to be sharp in the boardroom, or maybe they're coming off of so much stress throughout the house that just improving the efficiency of how the brain communicates with itself equates to a faster synaptic activity for how we process information, how we articulate our thoughts, how we retain information. And from a cognitive standpoint, it's highly advantageous. Then you think about, in our brain, we have 5 different kinds of brain waves: alpha, beta, theta, gamma, and delta, simplistically. And each of those have a different ratio that should take place based on your age, your gender, your dominant side of your brain that's being used. We start with a brain map that gives me an accurate portrayal of how that brain's actually working, communicating, how those brain waves are activating throughout conscious and subconscious data collection. As a result, that gets compared to an international database that's sent over to Sweden. They come back with about a 28-page report that shows me the standard deviations of how your brain's working next to another 50-year-old good-looking male like yourself.
Oh, come on, prophesy.
And then we have a presentation for the patient that says, look, we're 2 or 3 standard deviations outside of here, and based on that, we're able to generate prognosis of sessions. Now, neurofeedback, kind of like classical conditioning, feeds on the reward center of the brain. So the brain does not respond to negative feedback. It responds to positive feedback. And for instance, a session might look like as simple as sitting in a massage chair or a lazy boy watching Netflix, but that screen might have a filter on it. The headphones you're listening to might have some background chimes or tones in it. But when your brain's actually performing at the point that we want it to for your treatment, those distractions dissipate, making it easier on the brain to focus on what you're watching, what you're hearing. That stimulates the reward center of the brain, and over time, that becomes a physiologically learned way of how the brain should talk to itself.
Wow.
And though for
you're like resyncing the brain.
You're resyncing the brain, and then the aspect of ADHD, depression, anxiety, insomnia, memory loss, those are all based around our limbic system being out of its homeostasis. Yep. So the big component that neurofeedback is instead of putting a 12-year-old that's dealing with ADHD on a medication that they're going to be on for how many years, we can actually train that source of that discommunication or that inefficiency and correct that from a physiological standpoint, so that after they're done neurologically maturing, that's stuck in place. You can do that for adults too.
And the reason why this is so important, people need to know this, all the seed oils messing our brain up, all the caffeinated drinks, Monster, all these sugar drinks and Monster caffeinated drinks are jacking our brain up. All these excitotoxins, all the chemicals, the sweeteners, the aspartame, the sucralose, all those things throw our brain off, throw our entire nervous system off, but specifically our brain. And people got to know it's the foods, it's the high stress, it's the negative fear-based media, fake news, that's getting our brain so wound up that if you don't do something like this, you're wondering why your body's having all these symptoms.
Right.
And people are going to medications. They're looking for every lotion, potion, and pill, to help them with this. But really, it's the resetting of the brain.
It is.
I mean,
nervous system.
How is not everybody getting neurofeedback?
Well, I think, again, there's the educational piece, which is why it's so important for us to do things like this.
Yeah.
I think that it's also, there's a variance in expertise. And I think that there's also the aspect of conveying to a patient what the proper expectations are.
Yeah.
If you're going to come in and do neurofeedback for 10 sessions, I can tell you without hesitation that the likeliness of us achieving treatment goals in that short a time frame is minuscule. If you're committed to a treatment plan with the end goal being a long-standing one and done kind of treatment plan, that's where we have success. And so
what does that mean exactly?
It takes about 45 minutes out of your day, 2 to 3 times a week is average. And then I actually coined a remote program so that I could work with my remote athletes, my patients that travel from outside the state or the country to come do other services, where we get you within about 1.5 standard deviations, and then you become a candidate for our cloud software to do remotely. So it alleviates the hindrance of coming in to the clinic whatsoever. And that's based around a membership fee, which makes it arguably the most cost effective in the United States. And so, again,
they have to change their diet.
They do. Yeah, it all starts with that. And I'm a big proponent of, I know you are too, the Kangen water and hydrogen water, and how even when we're eating natural and good produce, it's how we wash our produce. It's the water that hydrolyzes and complements hyperbaric. It's how we saturate our body with oxygen from both respiratorily and what we do hydration wise.
Yeah.
And I think that, much to your point, what we're forgetting in this country is how many things that are allowed in our Food and Drug Administration that don't get away with that in any other place in the world. But it's,
well, hopefully that's going to change, man. Hopefully that's going to change. If you had to give hope to people and they're on the budget, what would you say? Neurofeedback, hyperbaric?
I think that it comes down to what our treatment goals are. If it's an aspect of my neuro performance, as I like to call it, is something that I want to enhance, then a more specific approach to that is going to be via neurofeedback. If it's, I have several different things, I'm a weekend warrior, I like to be active, I want to live forever kind of aspect. That's where hyperbaric oxygen therapy trumps just about anything else on the marketplace, in my clinical opinion. And I think in a perfect world, hyperbaric oxygen and setting that stage for that nervous tissue via 100% saturation of oxygen perfusion to the brain equates to faster results taking place with some of the other neuro-stimulating modalities that we offer, like neurofeedback. So they complement each other.
I thought about you the other day. It's funny, I read this interview. No one thought they'd ever need a phone that was a computer. Now, look, we couldn't do anything without our Apple phone. But back in the day, like, no one needs that. They were like, poo-poo, no one wants to do this. No one wants to do that.
Right.
We have computers for email. We have this. I mean, look, he just said nope, and he set the bar. I think, too, people are getting to the place, they're sick of medications. They're sick of the pharmacology. They're sick of feeling like crap, run down, no energy, and they're in their 40s. You look at what's happening with men and testosterone.
Right.
You look at EMFs, what EMFs is doing to people. There is only a couple great solutions, and the most important is that you want to think right.
Right.
So if you want to think right, that's what neurofeedback is for.
At the end of the
day, if you want to recover right, I mean, we got the hyperbarics. I mean, this should be in every city.
I agree.
Every chiropractor should have one of these spots.
I think so. It's a great adjunct to your treatment plans for all your patients. It's a great entrepreneurial aspect of being able to spread a very advantageous treatment to the masses while still having a good return on investment as an entrepreneur. But I think that the reality, I mean, to the testosterone, it's because we have so much soy in our diets and things like that. And when we think about the aspect of, optimizing from the get-go where we start in the body, you got to remember the nervous system controls the whole thing.
Whole game.
So,
You know, what's amazing to me is, you know, how many people still aren't under chiropractic care, but I take care of all these young, I was looking it up the other day. I probably have about 30 kids playing high school football.
yep.
But I just found out the stat of how many high school football kids are actually in my community. I was like, man, I suck, because they are getting hit every Friday night. They're getting smashed all week long.
Yep.
And yet they're not on, you know, they're not in my hyperbaric chamber.
Yep.
They're not, we got to figure out how to educate coaches,
That's true.
how every player, if they want to go, maybe they just want to go through high school, they're not going to think right in college. Yet all these parents are going to pay for college, and their kid just got how many micro traumas worth of football, but they're just cheering every Friday night lights, but yet doing no recovery,
Right.
no, not proper nutrition, not the oxygen, you know, rehab they need,
Right.
so they can be 100%. And they wonder why you get so many 30-year-olds that are woke and broke.
All right.
They're not thinking right.
Well, and I think that two things about sports, you know, this has kind of been a big part of my career is concussion prevention, prophylactic neuro performance enhancement to reduce the risk factor of that injury causing impact taking place. And I think that all starts with a really solid baseline concussion assessment before any participation. And we're not talking about the impact test. We're not talking about the SCAT test that, as an athlete myself, I used to fake so that I already looked bad on paper. So that when I got my bell rung and I was really trying to get back on the field, chances are I was still going to pass and pull the wool over my trainer's eyes a little bit. So,
and they all know those tricks now.
100%.
Yeah.
And I think that, you know, having a specific analysis of how the brain worked before any injury occurs also gives us the most optimal safety net of knowing when it's appropriate to put a player back on the field.
So how do we design a program where we just go in before they play high school football and we just offer, like, let's get everyone like a preset brain neurofeedback baseline?
Well, it's funny you say that, Dr. Matt, because I've been doing that in Colorado for
I haven't been
all the major organizations. I think that also we realize how many athletes at the caliber that we see in the California market are actually looking to make strides to play in college, and when football ends, still have a well thought out career path or a family life. And so what is easy to do is I've coined a baseline test. It takes an individual about 10 minutes to complete in office. It utilizes a very specialized treatment modality known as Dynavision, which is a visual motor training device. But I've worked with that company since 2015 on mastering a baseline concussion assessment that doesn't allow anybody to fake it because it's randomized, but it's evaluating the same functional components from visual acuity, reaction speed.
And you have that software?
I do. Yep.
Let's go.
Yep.
All right. We're doing this in San Diego.
Yeah. I think it's going to shake some things up in a really good way.
Yeah. If you had to leave everybody with just a couple, you know, points of inspiration, like, you know, what do you think this next iteration of people getting healthy, people getting proactive? I mean, I don't care if you're a weekend warrior or, you know, you're still playing high level, even pickleballers.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, dear Lord, how can we help the masses with this? What should they do? What would the first step be?
Well, there's a lot to be said about something like pickleball or racket sports. Stimulates the cerebellum, which unlocks a lot of potential of the other areas of our nervous system. So I encourage that kind of activity or training being done. I think that we are coming into a great season where if we look at the positives from what a pandemic caused, was that it was the first time we had a radical shift in people awakening to the idea of being wellness patients and not sickness patients. And so people being more prophylactic on how they want to preserve the brain. I mean, it's not like our kidney or our lung. We only got one of them.
Yep.
So taking that initiative to not just be the person that wants to, you know, be at the gym, but also the guy that wants to think about our office that we're building here as a gym for your brain.
Yep.
Come and work out your brain so that we can take not only your physicality, but your mentality to a different level. And the biggest hope or piece of advice I can tell you is that when you're working with a specific neurodeficit if I know exactly where I need to get you back to, there is such a concept of neuroplasticity that gives us hope that there is no dead end to the potential of how we can rebuild a neural pathway to some extent. But the old school approach of thinking, put them in a dark, quiet room for a couple of weeks just allows negative adaptation to take place. Where what we know now is as soon as they have an impact, they should be seen by a practitioner like myself or yourself and assessed for what that deficit equated to. And then soon, or if not immediately thereafter, start stimulating that back to a pre-injury status where we know that preserving how important it is to play team sports is something that we can do health consciously without having to roll the dice on if it's negative parenting of us putting our kids in contact sports.
Yeah, I love it. You know what? We learned a lot with the death of Junior Seau, when they did that. That woke everybody up. And now we know there's lots of things like this that can help people. So appreciate you being on this episode of the Maverick Entrepreneur.
Hey, thanks.
You guys stay tuned. We'll have the website. We'll have all the details for the HBOT Spa here in California and opportunities to go nationwide. So stay tuned, and I appreciate you being here. And we got lots. I think we need to do this again. Maybe
I would love to.
Yeah, we're going to make this more of an occurrence because I think this is going to stimulate lots of questions. That's going to help have the right conversation. So thanks so much.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
We'll see you on the next episode of the Maverick Entrepreneur.